My name is Juan Villadia. I am a student in the 3300 class, and I was supposed to watch I Love Sarah Jane. I considered doing it through several lenses. I think there's some really interesting stuff going on with the women in this story and the way they act and the way they do certain actions and how that's framed. I also think there's some interesting ways you can deconstruct this text. And I honestly think there's some really interesting queer, maybe subtext, possibly even just text. But what I decided to focus on was a Marxist class analysis of this writing, because I think that there's something to be said about the zombie genre in general and how it relates to class. Plot summary first. I Love Sarah Jane is about a young girl who is living in this mostly post-apocalyptic, there's still news and government, but mostly post-apocalyptic world. I'm going to say in Australia. She has a friend, question mark, and they run into this family where both parents are now dead, and eventually Sarah Jane, who is one of the surviving members of the family, has to kill both the little girl's friend and her zombie dad. Personally, I did not care for this short film. I don't like films where the whole premise seems to be that humans kinda suck, unless that film is either a dark comedy or it's about a man who thinks it's true, but the movie itself is kinda morally gray about it. This movie is just people being kinda mean to each other in ways that I don't personally think were funny or interesting. But I do think there's some interesting things going on in this short film in terms of class, and I think that there's a bit of intention on that part. Sorry, got a little notification for a moment there. So, in the short film, we see Sarah Jane watching television in her house, and we just see it and just looking in horror at the circumstances that are happening in the world, and I think that that is an intentional choice. I think the filmmaker is making a point about how this story isn't about powerful people or the government officials or military people trying to get this zombie outbreak under control. Instead, this story is about the everyman. It is about these sort of rednecks out in the Australian suburbs/rural areas trying to survive a situation where government and the people who are supposed to guardrail our society from what we see have objectively failed the working class people who are not at the bottom but have gone the shaft more quickly than others. We hear about the military, and we hear about the cities, and we hear about the capital, and we hear about the military, but we don't hear any plans for any rural area or for any suburban area. And from what we can tell, they're pretty much on their own, both in terms of what the news is reporting and from what we see the situation is on the ground. The government has not valued them, and when given the choice, the government has let them collapse. This is a common theme in zombie fiction, from Night of the Living Dead onward. In zombie fiction, more so than any other fiction, people are left on their own. And I don't think it's a coincidence that in American cinema, being left on your own with nothing but guns mostly translates to you being in the countryside. Zombieland and The Walking Dead start off in random suburbs, and a lot of runtime is given to this sort of empty countryside, rural America setting. Zombie media is apocalyptic in its nature. For the plot to work in a work of zombie fiction, there need to be a lot of zombies. And in order for there to be a lot of zombies, the government and the wealthy and the powerful had to have really messed up in their jobs. So zombies sort of become this embodiment of our fear of the masses. Vampires are our fear of the wealthy, as like creepy old people who leech off our blood. Serial killers are our fears of sexuality. And ghosts are our fears of our past coming to haunt us, either in a personal sense, see The Others or The Shining, or our cultural racial past, cough cough Indian burial grounds in also The Shining and Poltergeist. But zombies sort of embody our fears of masses of people. This idea that humans as a collective group are mindless idiots who will consume everything they see for no reason, with no regard to consequences, and without any orders from anybody, humanity will collapse and destroy itself with its mindless consumption. So in this zombie fictions usually take place in places where people think other people are mindless idiots. So from the 80s through the 2000s, you kind of get malls as sort of this zombie setting. But you also get a lot of zombie films that take place in the countryside. And it sort of goes into this larger idea that people from cities see, from every social class within the cities, see that Middle America as this sort of lawless place where everybody is a poor redneck who does nothing but drink beer, chew guns, date their cousins, and have face tattoos. It is a classist idea that I think we're still trying to move past. Most horror from the 2010s still takes place in suburban areas or in secluded parts of the country, from Get Out to Halloween to It Follows to Hereditary to Stranger Things. But it seems as though America is not interested in horror movies in cities. And I do think that there's a bit of classism to that Middle America still thinks that Middle America, and in I Love Sarah Jane, that this idea that horror only happens in Middle America, or in rural countrysides where there's no law. Thank you.